welcome to episode 195 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the football and IndyCar season review edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and I'm with my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, computer genius, a gentleman and a scholar. His name is Josh Fine. What's going on, brother?
I'm doing great, Phil. Of course, first weekend without racing this past weekend, so a little lackluster, but of course, we'll get back at it this weekend, although we'll all be asleep with the 1 a.m. Grand Prix. But yeah, guess we got to review IndyCar tonight and talk about everything that happened this past season and review that.
Yeah, we'll talk about the compelling year that was a 2023 NTT IndyCar season and Alex Palou becoming a two-time series champion and all else that went on during the year and the key players that stood out and some other things that went on during the year, along with the update with news, since there's been some updates with the teams and what they're how they're going to be formatted or whatever. For football side, of course, we're getting week 10 in terms of the matchup between our two teams. I'm end up happier, I guess, in this one. But Jacksonville definitely is still in a prime position to win their division, even with the result of yesterday. Didn't lose anybody big, it didn't seem so. Even with that loss, the Niners were due. So we'll get into that game. We'll get into fantasy. We've got Buffalo hosting Denver in a windstorm. We'll talk about that. And then we'll get into a roundup, which has MotoGP and Moto2. They're on their last three races of the season. Last week was at Malaysia, and there'll be a Qatar this week. NHRA ended their 2023 season and crowned four new champions. And then WRC Rally Japan will also update news across the world of motorsports. And then we'll preview the Las Vegas Grand Prix, aka the 1 a.m. Grand Prix, and the significance of the Las Vegas Grand Prix. There was a Las Vegas Grand Prix long before either of us were born, and it was in the parking lot of Caesar's Palace. This time they'll be utilizing the streets of Las Vegas. They'll be using the Strip. The FIA or F1 Liberty Media has basically promoting the race on their own. They bought land to make a permanent pit road and paddock area. So, and they're committed 10-year deal to this race. So we'll talk all about that. Josh will let us know all things going on in the world of iRacing and gaming, stuff going on in the world of IndyCar because of the situation with motorsports games, and we'll close the deal. So we'll start with, of course, 2023 IndyCar, NTT IndyCar Series season. In a year that, we looked at championship contenders. Will Power was the defending series champion. He'd had a strong, very consistent year in 2022 to win his elusive second title. So you would have thought that Penske would continue with that momentum. Will Power was looking at trying to get a third title. Chevrolet, of course, trying to continue their prowess in the IndyCar series. But in the end, early in the season, we didn't really know who was going to be the lead dog. You had 5 different winners in the first 5 races, with Marcus Ericsson winning at St. Pete. With the aftermath of Romain Grosjean and I'm trying to remember who he got into the incident with. Romain Grosjean crashed with somebody gonna get her. I think it was Scott McLaughlin. Yeah, it was Romain Grosjean and Scott McLaughlin, or Romain Grosjean and Joseph Newgarden, one of those. Then you had Newgarden coming back at Texas to start what ended up being basically an oval domination season for Joseph Newgarden. McLaughlin, and then Kyle Kirkwood won his first IndyCar race at the Grand Prix of Long Beach. Scott McLaughlin won at Baba to get his first win of 2023. Indy GP saw a dominant performance as Buffalo gets a touchdown with Dalton Kincaid, and now they're back in the game. Indy GP, the first one of the year, saw Alex Palou dominate, and it was a sign of things to come. He qualified on pole for the Indianapolis 500 and was on deck to probably win the race if it weren't for an incident on pit road where Rinus VeeKay got into him. Alex Palou had to go to tailback and after doing repairs to his number 10 car, and then he came back from that and all the way to fourth. But Joseph Newgarden held off Marcus Ericsson and prevented Marcus Ericsson from becoming the first repeat winner of the Indianapolis 500 since Helio Castro-Neves in 01 and 02. So they just went and called it back. What the heck? Okay. Yeah. Oh, it's offsides on Denver. Okay. So the touchdown does stand, and they're going to go back out for two-point conversion? Really? This early in the game? That's crazy. Whatever. Alex Palou didn't let it stop him. He had, after St. Pete, where he finished 8th, he was on a run of 5 consecutive top 5s with 1 win. And then he set the tone for the rest of the season by winning 3 consecutive races at Detroit, back in the streets of Detroit, Road America, and Mid-Ohio. It wasn't initially, I think at Mid-Ohio, nobody really thought that he was going to win the race from where he started, but Strat went his way. Oh, great throw by Josh Allen to Gabe Davis. He actually caught the ball. Yeah, so now it's 9-8. Road America was domination. Mid-Ohio, he ended up dominating the race, and Scott Dixon, who's won at Mid-Ohio a trillion times, finished behind him. Palou got damage early in the race at Toronto, but still recovered to finish second. Had a broken wing, and was able to go and finish second behind Christian Lundgaard, who became the second first-time winner of 2023 there. First non-top 5 finish since St. Pete at Iowa, gets a third in the second race. Nashville gets a third there. And then 2 7th place finishes, Indy GP and Gateway, before winning at Portland, which essentially solidified the championship right then and there. And then he finished third at Laguna Seca, 656 points, 22, 56, and 78-point victory, 78-point gap between himself and Scott Dixon, his teammate, to become a 2-time series champion. I mean, the one thing that we can say about Alex Palou, really, outside of how dominant he was at times, is his inability to honor contracts. It's a good thing that his marital vows and everything are ironclad, because I could only imagine what that would be like if him and his wife got into it and they got divorced. But they're expecting a baby, so I don't think that's going to happen. Don't want to bring that juju. I just figured out in terms of contracts and everything. But for Alex Palou, Josh, he was unbelievable in 2023, and now he will continue at Chip Ganassi Racing for the foreseeable future, which means that, I mean, can he continue this run? Can he go and be like Scott Dixon and win get into that like stratosphere of champions, 3 championships and more, which I mean, there aren't that many guys who won more than 2 championships in IndyCar, so that would really speak to how good Alex Palou is. But right now, he did a great job in 2023, and it's hard to find many faults with how he performed on the racetrack.
Yeah, contract stuff aside, which I think, that's all being ironed out in court and everything, and looks like he's going to be at Chip Ganassi for the future, at least right now, currently. But his on-track performance just been consistent throughout the year. Had 5 wins, including 4 out of 5 wins throughout the month of May, and going all the way through June and July. Only stopped by himself really at Indianapolis 500. Had a chance to win that one, or was in contention to win that one, but that didn't turn out well there, at least not being able to win that race. But besides that, won again at Portland, and then of course had 6 additional podiums in addition to those wins, so 10 podiums total to go throughout the year. So, and of course, in addition to that, of course, winning the most races, led the most laps outside of Joseph Newgarden. Of course, his laps bulk of those are on ovals, but had a strong average finish of 3.7. So, very for him, I think it's very Scott Dixon-like of a performance. From what we've seen over the years from Scott Dixon, I think he's taking well to what his veteran teammate has been able to put up over his career, and I think I've said it before, but it looks like it's kind of a shifting of the guard at Chip Ganassi Racing. Obviously, Scott Dixon still trying to go for 7 titles, which puts him in the realms of that 7 title club, as we've seen in other forms of motorsports in F1 and NASCAR. But for Scott Dixon, I think he's going to have a really phenomenal year next year to be able to get to Alex Palou, and likewise, I think Alex Palou is becoming that driver in IndyCar that can be dominant from a year-to-year basis, like what we've seen from Scott Dixon. So definitely think Alex Palou, after 2022, we thought he wasn't that great, and we thought he'd be hampered by his contract situation, and we thought he'd be a sitting duck. Well, he comes out and lights the IndyCar world on fire and goes out and wins the championship. So I think, as long as he continues to do what he's been doing, then I think he has a strong chance of repeating in champion next year, and it's going to be really tough for the rest of the field to beat him. And I think the only thing left that he needs to do really is win an Indianapolis 500, which he's been in contention a few times for. So we'll see if he's able to finally come through with that next season.
Yeah, and that's one thing. The ovals are basically the only part of his game that he hasn't mastered. But when you consider who he drives for and the experience he continues to gain, it's only a matter of time. Going and setting a 1-4 lap track record at Indianapolis to win the pole for the 500 speaks to an ability to put things together on big ovals. Short ovals are a bit more of a challenge, and I think if he was able to pick up that piece, the short oval piece, it would be absolutely ridiculous and almost unstoppable. But You can't go and completely say that's, I mean, saying he's unstoppable, it was what he was this year, but you look at Scott Dixon, the 6-time champion, the ageless wonder, the man who has ran for Chip Ganassi longer than anybody in the history of the organization. The start of the year was somewhat quiet. Long Beach, he got wrecked by him and Pato O'Ward, got into a little argy-bargy, and he fell out of that race, and that was the only blemish on his whole entire season. Every other race, he finished in the top 10, and which is very Scott Dixon-like, and in many years, that would have been good enough. You look at his gap, he was 90 points ahead of Scott McLaughlin. He would have won a championship, but his teammate just was better. Winning 3 of the last 4 races, though, shows that Scott Dixon isn't going away. It is the challenge to go and beat his own teammate, just like he had when Dario Franchitti was around, is there. But the difference between Dario and Palou is that Dario and Scott were compatriots. They were contemporaries, essentially. I mean, Dario had been in the series for a couple of years prior to Scott Dixon, maybe 2-3 years, I think, before Scott Dixon ended up starting his career. But they're contemporaries. Alex Palou is much younger, and the future is with him at Chip Ganassi Racing. We'll talk about what is now an expanding Chip Ganassi Racing IndyCar program, but Dixon winning 3 of the last 4 races, uber consistent, going and having podium on 3 wins and 6 podiums, no finish worse than 7th outside of Long Beach, is a championship level performance, and it speaks to the viability of Scott Dixon. There aren't any major changes coming along with his PNC Bank Honda team, so he'd be coming back. He'd have the momentum. He wants to start out well, limit those bad races. That's the way to go and win championships, and that he can avoid that at Long Beach or St. Pete for the first time in a while. In a long time, he had a good finish at St. Petersburg. So, I mean, you can never count out Scott Dixon in IndyCar for as long as he's going to be around. He's probably going to be racing until he's 100, but he's going to be good, and he's going to be a factor. Another piece is we go from the Honda. The top 2 guys are Honda drivers, and we get into Chevrolet, and the drivers who finished 3rd through 5th, and if we expand it, get from 3rd through 7th, 4 of those 5 drivers were Chevrolet drivers. The 3 Penske guys, Scott McLaughlin, Joseph Newgarden, and defending champion Will Power, and sandwich in between was Pato O'Ward. McLaughlin ended up finishing 4 points ahead of Pato O'Ward, and Newgarden was 9 points behind his bus bro brother, and Will Power ended up finishing 7th in points. Chevrolet ends up winning the Manufacturers' Championship. I think it was a combination of strength and numbers, but I also think quality. There's also an aspect of quality where Chevrolet had Penske Racing and you had McLaren, while Honda was Ganassi, and you had some flashes from Ray Hall and then some flashes from Andretti, but they weren't as strong. That's really where Honda loses out there, and they're probably looking at making adjustments to that and doing better in 2024. But I mean, when you look at Chevrolet, Scott McLaughlin only won one race in 2023, but sprinkled around that one race win were 3 outside of the top 10 finishes. It took until Detroit, where he started to get more consistent, finish in the top 10. He finished in the top 10 every race for the rest of the year, but he only had 4 more top 5s, 2 more podiums. So it wasn't a consistent year for Scotty, but in his his 3rd season in IndyCar, he's solidified himself as a so 20, 21, 22, or his 4th year in his 4th year in IndyCar. He's really truly solidifying himself as a championship contender. The competitiveness and consistency has to get there, but he's undeniably fast on road courses. That talent is always shown from his days in the supercars. But only one win, and that general inconsistency while your championship rivals are finishing in the top 5 regularly is something that has to improve. Pato O'Ward had 3 runner-up finishes in the first 5 races of the year and a 4th place at Baba, but the incident with Scott Dixon at Long Beach relegated him to a 17th place finish. Indianapolis, he was running up front with a chance to win the Indy 500 and crashed. And then he was involved in a first lap incident with his teammate Felix Rosenqvist at Detroit. And he had issues with this car shutting off on pit road. So those 2 finishes basically ended his chance at the championship right then and there. He would finish on the podium another 4 times. Another 4 times during the year, and I don't know what that is. It says 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, he finished 9th. Yeah, he finished 9th in the season finale. Okay. O'Ward continues to show why he's the lead dog at McLaren. Somebody who's one of the fastest guys. Oh, that's a bad pick by Josh Allen. That is a really bad pick. O'Ward didn't win a race, but he was a factor throughout the season, and he's someone that, with further consistency, working on his consistency, I think he'll be there for the foreseeable future. Joseph Newgarden's season was a tale of 2 parts. I think you look at Texas, where he battled O'Ward to the finish and beat him there. Of course, winning at Indianapolis to finally get over that, get that monkey off his back, running into the crowd, all the emotion, basically confirming that he's never going to get fired by Roger Penske. He's probably going to be employed there for the next 30 years by going and winning that Indianapolis 500. He won both races at Iowa. He finished 2nd at Road America, but sprinkled around those results was really a hodgepodge. You had some really bad races and not the most amazing performance from a guy who is a multi-time series champion. But he was in the race early after Indianapolis. He was leading the points, I think, or was up there. And 10th at Detroit, second at Road America, he was still in the mix, and I think he was still really had a chance after the Iowa doubleheader, but then consecutive 25th place finishes at Indy GP2 and Gateway, which is one of his best racetracks, of course, when he was trying to sweep the season on ovals, essentially ended his campaign. But I'll talk about those three guys, Josh. I mean, for Penske, they wanted to get another championship. They get two guys in the top 5 in points. They get the Indianapolis 500 for the first time in a few years. Joseph Newgarden gets over that proverbial hump. Pato O'Ward was there, and he had a chance at a lot of races this year to win, but they didn't get that win. McLaren, even though they expanded to 3 teams, they weren't able to win a race this year. Alexander Rossi comes in to the fold. Felix Rosenqvist ran for them and now is on his way out, but they solidified. I think McLaren made themselves probably. There was a question of, are they one of the big time teams? I think now they are, and Chevrolet is relying on them along with Penske Racing to go and continue winning manufacturers championships. What did you take away from those 3 guys and Chevy in general in 2023?
I mean, I think, with O'Ward, he had a lot of chances throughout the year to win, mainly St. Petersburg and the Indianapolis 500. At St. Petersburg, he was in the lead until 4 laps to go and had an issue on the front stretch and got passed by Marcus Ericsson there and wasn't able to get back around him and ended up losing the race. So had a chance to start the year with the victory, but didn't pan out that way for him. And then at the Indy 500, of course, he was up there potentially racing for the win, and made a desperation move into turn 3 underneath Marcus Ericsson and spun out and crashed there. So those are honestly 2 of his best chances to win this season. And really for what McLaren, what they wanted to do this year, I think they have to be disappointed that they didn't win a race with any of their drivers. They had chances throughout the year. Alex Rossi had a chance at Detroit to possibly get around and get a pass against Alex Palou, but wasn't quite able to get it done there. They had chance again with the award at St. Petersburg and Indianapolis, and Felix Rosenqvist was also good in the Indy 500, but ended up crashing out of that one as well. So you have to wonder. There's probably a bit of disappointment there that they didn't win a race. Pato also finished second in Gateway. Of course, Scott Dixon won that race, but led laps there and was in contention to possibly get a win there. So a little bit disappointing there, but they had opportunities throughout the year. But I think they're going to get better, and of course they upgraded with David Malukas and going to McLaren. So I think that's going to be interesting dynamic there as well. So you have that opportunity there for them to kind of build upon what they did this year. And then, for Penske with Scott McLaughlin and Joseph Newgarden, of course, McLaughlin, in that same St. Petersburg race, tangled with Roman Grosjean, coming out of the pits. And obviously that was a battle between those 2 drivers in that race. And, I think for McLaughlin, again, like Pato O'Ward, that was also a missed opportunity there for him to come out and get a victory there. So, for him not to get a win in the first race of the season, it's kind of a disappointment there, of course. But at the same time, his finishes weren't really that bad the first couple of races of the season, considering where they finished. They got a 6th place at Texas, 10th at Long Beach, which is an IndyCar, which is okay, a top 10 still. And then they won at Barber Motorsports Park in Alabama. So, there was that opportunity as well, to start out the season well, which they relatively did. They were fourth place in the standings after the Barber, and then at Indianapolis, they didn't really have a good month of May. 16th at the Grand Prix, and then 14th at the Indy 500. And then after that, they didn't finish outside the top 10. So they eventually made their way up to third place in the standings. So really, I think maybe Scott McLaughlin could have had a better placement in the standings if he would have had a better month of May, and if he would have had a better showing at St. Petersburg, a possible win there. So I think it was a very, very consistent year overall for McLaughlin, even though he didn't win as many races, and of course he also won the pole at Nashville and led laps there, and possibly could have had a win there, but Kyle Kirkwood ended up taking that win there. So, for McLaughlin, of course, it's got to build upon that consistency and convert some of that into wins. And then, for Newgarden, obviously he wins the biggest race of the year in the Indy 500 and won all but one of the oval races. But, I think his results kind of show he was a bit more of a boomer bust driver than in recent years in IndyCar. So, they were kind of inconsistent on the road courses throughout the season. And then at the end of the year, they had a chance to kind of reel in Alex Blow for a victory. But then, of course, at the Indianapolis Grand Prix at the second running in August, they had a poor showing there, got caught up in an early accident, and were never able to, get out of, get back from that momentum loss there. And then Gateway, they led a ton of laps there, were on the pole, and then had handling issues, and then ended up falling out of the race with contact that they made. So just a unfortunate ending for him, of course, was I think because of his oval wins, ended up being the main challenger to Alex Blow throughout the year. But it would have been, even if they had those races back with the Indianapolis Grand Prix and then at Gateway, I think it still would have been a tough order for him to be able to, get up against Alex Blow there. I mean, even before that Grand Prix at Nashville, they finished fourth, but they were still looking at the standings. They were still 84 points behind Alex Blow. So still would have been a tough order for Newgarden to be able to, possibly get closer to the points lead and apply pressure and everything. Because then at Laguna Seca, they had a poor running there and ended up finishing in 21st. But of course, by that point of the the year, at the end of the year, they were already out of contention. So things, if they were in contention, then obviously maybe that race turns out a little bit differently. But they just weren't. Outside of those oval wins, they were very hit or miss throughout the year. So I think Penske overall, I don't think they have too much to worry about. But I think they were just a little off in some areas that I think prevented them from being able to compete for the driver's title. But of course, it's good enough, I think, with all three drivers that we mentioned, McLaughlin, Award, and Newgarden, being able to go out and be good enough to win and contribute to the manufacturer's title in IndyCar. So at least Chevy can hang their hats on that performance and what they were able to do throughout the year.
Yeah, and they're going to be a factor no matter what. Penske is Penske. You can't ever count them out, no matter what the race is or what the track is. So Newgarden going for a third championship, McLaughlin trying to get that first championship and add his name to the Indianapolis 500 winners list for Penske. That's something that we'll be looking at, more consistency in general and more winning from those guys. I brought up Kyle Kirkwood and Christian Lundgaard. Both of those guys bring up the next generation, really, of the IndyCar drivers. You have contrasting stories. You have Kyle Kirkwood, who has had a taste of European racing, but ended up going through the road to Indy and winning championships in every class, and ended up getting to IndyCar racing for Foyt. Did a lot of wrecking, driving for Foyt a couple of years ago, and then this year advanced, came back to Andretti Autosport, or now under Andretti Global, to race, take over the seat that was vacated by Alexander Rossi. And he gets the 2 wins on the year. He gets his first win, of course, at the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach. And he adds his name to a very big group of guys who have won their first career race at Long Beach. Michael Andretti, Paul Tracy, is that the Grey Cup? Yeah. Just to name a few. Those are just a couple of those names. I mean, there's been famous names that have won at Long Beach, so Kyle Kirkwood adds his name to that list. He also won at Nashville, used good strategy and pace to get that second win on the season. There were times where he kind of went missing because Andretti's competitiveness in general wasn't great at times. It held both Kyle Kirkwood and Colton Herta back, but I think there might be something changing with that leading into this next year. Christian Lundgaard for Rahal Letterman Lanigan, his pace, especially one lap pace, he showed it from his first time driving an IndyCar at the Indy Grand Prix in the August race a couple of years ago. And this year he showed that he had great pace, or he had the ability to run up front. And once he was able to get a pole position, which he did at Toronto, he took advantage of that and basically was lights to flag victor there. Both Indy GP races, he had a really competitive car. Mid-Ohio, which is a home game for Rahal, they were very, very competitive. Those were the bright spots for him. And I guess you'd call Barber and the road courses are definitely where Christian Lundgaard, coming from the Formula One feeder system, where he's going to show his prowess. But what it also showed is that Rahal Letterman Lanigan can put good cars out there, competitive winning cars out there, after a few lean years for that organization. I'm going to combine this with Marcus Ericsson, since Marcus Ericsson will be moving after spending multiple years with Ganassi. Initially ran for McLaren and then had been at Ganassi. He's going to be moving over to Andretti Autosport, or Andretti Global. Sorry, I did it again. To race as teammates with Kirkwood and Colton Herta. And that was the big news of the silly season. His decision and where he would go played a big role, and the dominoes started to fall from there. When it comes to the 2 new first-time winners, it's not, in terms of winning an IndyCar, it's very difficult to win an IndyCar when you have the likes of Dixon, Palou, Newgarden, etc. But to be a young driver, be in a second year on the series, and to go and get a victory in such a tight field, it speaks to their viability. I mean, Kyle Kirkwood is unquestioned one of the best that's come through the road to Indy. Can he go out there and become a championship contender? That's to be determined. He definitely has assisted Lexus in their winning championships and IMSA. And then with Christian Lundgaard, his goal was Formula One, but now he's primed in IndyCar, and Rahal has signed him up for a long-term deal. Those two guys, I think, with the road to Indy and showing how the guys coming from Indy next, there's two feeder systems for IndyCar right now. You have the Indy Next guys and the road to Indy, but then you also have the Formula 2, Formula 3 pipeline in Europe, because now a lot of these drivers that are winning and doing well there are ending up without a seat, because Formula 1 only has 20 seats, and a lot of them are taken up and are held by younger drivers and that have long-term futures, and the ones that aren't long-term guys, they still have multi-year contracts. So in terms of looking at Kyle Kirkwood and Christian Lundgaard, do we look at those guys as title contenders after this season, now that they have become winners on the IndyCar circuit, or what do they have to work on to become title contenders in 2024, Josh?
I think Kyle Kirkwood has a better chance of being a title contender than Christian Lundgaard. I think Lundgaard is, while RLL's been on the turnaround as a whole, this past year they both performed. After they had their debacle at the Indy 500, they kind of turned it around. Graham Rahal had a great performance late in the year. Christian Lundgaard won, of course, at Toronto, but I think they have a lower ceiling as a team compared to Andretti. Not really sure. I believe that they're able to, even with their performance with Christian Lundgaard, I'm not sure that they can perform to championship contending level with that team, but that doesn't mean that they can't pick up a win or two here or there. So it's not really his fault. I just think he's going to be limited by the team there, but they still have a chance to be at least a they are a top 10 contending team, but they could maybe get into the top 5, but it's just hard to see them get into like the top 3 of the standings or anything like that. But Kirkwood, I think he has a little bit better of a chance, though. I think Andretti, they haven't really performed well either the last couple of years, but he won a handful of races and got a couple of podiums. So I think it's going to be key on Andretti being able to kind of rebuild. They're downsizing to 3 cars now this next season. So we'll see if the resources that they focus in on only being 3 cars kind of helps them rather than being spread out to 4. So I think Kirkwood, he did well in the street course races at Long Beach, of course, and then at Nashville. So the strategy is there. So kind of rebuilding year for Andretti after years of being off, but I think they have a good chance of being a better team next year. If they're able to put it together at some of these road courses. They had opportunities at St. Petersburg. Of course, they had opportunity to potentially get a good finish there before they got caught off in some stuff. They still need to improve their oval program. You had DNFs at Texas and Indianapolis. Didn't perform well at Gateway relatively. Iowa, they ran okay. So they still have opportunities to improve, but I feel like with what he was able to do in this car, otherwise what he was able to do on past teams, I think he has a higher ceiling to finish well, but potentially be a kind of a wild card in the standings as far as contending for the championship goes.
Yeah, I agree that the path for Kirkwood is probably much smoother, even though Andretti's recent performance hasn't been amazing. The years of Alexander Rossi being up there to compete for championships is going on 4 and 5 years ago, or 5 or 6 years ago. So, bringing up, well, that's why I wanted to bring up Ericsson. He comes in as a veteran type of presence in the IndyCar series as a winner in all different types of, winning street course races, permanent road course, and of course ovals. And then he also comes in as someone who's a stabilizing force, someone who brings cars home to the finish compared to the guy he's replacing in Romain Grosjean, his former Formula One compatriot. He comes in with Kyle Kirkwood and Colton Herta, who everybody knows how fast he is, but putting it all together for a full season has been that ultimate bugaboo for Colton. Long term is he's going to be an IndyCar, unless Michael Andretti's and the guy, the Gainbridge guy, if they end up getting the Formula One team to come off, then Colton Herta more than likely is going to Formula One. But when you look at those rookies and looking at those guys who won this year, trying to go and win in the series, you can't take it away from guys trying to win, especially when you're relatively inexperienced. So the fact they were able to do that speaks to ability. Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan made improvements, especially after the nightmare that was the Indianapolis 500. They are in a place now that we'll talk about them in terms of the silly season, that I think they might be in as good of a spot as they've been in a long, long time. I keep on talking about Ericsson, and he was the main player in the silly season. As I said, he ends up going to Andretti to team with those two young guys. Andretti Global will now be a 3-car organization. For a long time, they've been a 4-car organization. Essentially, that extra car from Andretti is going to be at Ganassi, because Ganassi goes and they have Palou and Dixon. The 8-car is going to be taken over. The 8-car will be taken over by former Indy Next champion Linus Lundqvist, who it took a while in the season for him to get an opportunity. He ended up driving for Meyer-Shank Racing and utilized that opportunity, and because of the injuries that Simon Pagenaud unfortunately had suffered in a wreck at Mid-Ohio, basically that was the end of his season. Hopefully it isn't the end of his career, but the way things have trended relative to guys who have been in a similar boat, we don't know what's going to happen with him. That opportunity for Linus Lundqvist opened the door for Chip Ganassi to go and say, I want to sign him and bring him into the fold. And that's what he did. He will bring Linus Lundqvist into Ganassi to drive the 8-car, taking over for Ericsson. And then Marcus Armstrong, who won the Rookie of the Year this year, only running the road courses, will be running the full season in 2024. And he will be driving a 4th car full time for Ganassi. And then the shocking news which came out was 19-year-old Kiffin Simpson, who's spent time in the sports car realm, ran Indy Next. He was put in, and he's going to be a 5th full-time car for Chip Ganassi Racing. So there's a lot of youth coming in, and Ganassi, who has been averse to running young talent, all of a sudden now has 4 of his 5 guys are under like 27 years old or whatever it is. So it's an interesting play by Ganassi to go and basically hedge with Dixon being that veteran, the dad, and then he has like 4 sons now out there essentially at Ganassi. Those are the 2 main Honda teams. Then you have Ray Hall, Letterman Lanigan, who will, of course, Graham Rahal will be back. We'll see how many more years he's going to race. It sounds like the days of him racing are getting closer to the end, and more likely he's getting to the days of becoming an owner. And Lundgaard is there, and then they signed Pietro Fittipaldi to be their 3rd driver, so bringing the Fittipaldi name back to IndyCar racing. His grandfather, Emerson Fittipaldi, of course, the 2-time IndyCar Series champion, 2-time Indianapolis 500 winner, former Formula One world champion, etc., etc. He's coming back to IndyCar after spending a few years as the test and reserve driver for Haas in F1, doing sports car racing. So that'll be a new team. That'll be a interesting combination there. Dale Coyne Racing hasn't announced who's going to be in their 2 cars, so the TBA drivers will be there at least for the foreseeable future. We'll see who ends up getting the call there. I mentioned Simon Pagenaud. He ended up not being able to finish the year for Meyer-Shank Racing. Meyer-Shank ended up essentially giving their Acura LMDH to Andretti Wayne Taylor Racing, and instead they're going to focus on IndyCar. Tom Blomqvist, who's been their driver for a couple of years in sports cars, will now be driving full-time in IndyCar next year. And Felix Rosenqvist, who has been at Ganassi and then at Rahal, will now be coming over to drive the 60 car for Meyer-Shank after what was a really bad year for the team in IndyCar. They're going to look to rebound and reset in 2024 with a new driver lineup with the Quists from Sweden. Of course, Tom Blomqvist, his father, is the legendary Stig Blomqvist, World Rally champion. And then Felix Rosenqvist has had pace, has been a fast driver over time, but has had a lot of bad luck in his time in IndyCar. So we will see what happens there in terms of the Honda guys. I mean, those are the main Honda teams. In terms of Chevy, Penske doesn't have any changes coming for their main team. Penske, though, has made a connection with AJ Foyt Racing, and they're going to be providing additional support to AJ Foyt's team. The beneficiary, at least next year, more than likely is going to be Santino Ferrucci, but the long-term goal, I think, is to see Miles Rowe drive for AJ Foyt Racing in IndyCar, to have a full-time African-American driver on the circuit. He is coming off of winning the U.S. Pro 2000 or F2000 championship this past season, and now is moving up to Indy Next. So we'll see how he does in 2024 there, and how that progression goes, if he's going to end up being in IndyCar sooner rather than later. The Josh brought up the change with McLaren. Of course, Rosenqvist moves on, and he will be replaced by David Malukas, and he'll be a fully funded driver. David Malukas, instead of bringing the funding to the organization, they'll be taking over that third car. So we'll see how that goes. In terms of other teams, you have the Ed Carpenter Racing team. Rinus VeeKay continues there. Ed Carpenter gets rid of the third car, and he's going to go back to running the ovals with the 20, and he's going to share the car with the defending Indy Lights champion, which now I'm forgetting. Just give me a second here. Or Indy Next champion from Christian Rasmussen will end up being the driver for the majority of races in 2024, and he will also run the Indianapolis 500. So that'll be an opportunity for him, especially at Indy, to see what he can do. Very continues the trend of these very fast young drivers, but can Ed Carpenter Racing put a team or a team together that'll be competitive? That's the curiosity after a few lean years for that organization. The Juncos Hollander team had Callum Ilott for the last couple of years, but controversy that came from the Argentinian fan base, the anger and vitriol that came from the fans of Agustin Canapino, who finished second in the rookie race. In the end, Callum Ilott now is on the streets without a job, which is pretty weak considering the performances he put in relative to the equipment that he had there. Top Firestone Fast Sixes, going up there and giving himself a chance to compete for good results. He finished in the top 5. He bookended the season with top 5 finishes at St. Pete and then at Laguna Seca. So he's a really talented race car driver, somebody who was in the Formula One pipeline as well. So it's somebody that we'll look at. The replacement for him there will be Romain Grosjean, who's going to be dovetailing his time with the Lamborghini team in IMSA and WEC, along with racing that prototype, and then he'll be racing IndyCar, and then Agustin Canapino is going to be back as a second driver there. Other than that, I'm trying to think of who else is on the grid in terms of the Chevy teams. I think that covers all of them, because I'm looking through the results of last year, and I'm trying to see who else was out there. And yeah, I think that's basically it. So those are the changes. Those are what the silly season has. I mean, we still have a few drivers to be determined. You have the 2 Dale Coyne cars are going to be determined, and so probably guys who have funding are probably going to be taking those rides, but we'll see what happens with that. So let me see. We talked about the last piece we'll get into before we move on. I mean, what stood out in this season, I guess, is a general question, and what needs to change for the series. I'll give my thoughts here in a moment, and then the introduction of hybridization to the series, which will basically give like a full-time opportunity for push to pass instead of having the push to pass element, you're going to have hybrid regeneration, braking regeneration, and they're going to be able to go and use that stored energy in a hybrid component to go and use it as push to pass. You'll have push to pass essentially on ovals, which will be interesting, especially at the Indianapolis 500, in terms of drafting and overtakes. But I mean, for me with IndyCar, it'll always be the promotion aspect of it. They have a great product. The cars are cool, even though they've been around for a long time. They sound good. They're not as cool as the old days with the Indy in the champ car days, but they suffice. They sound better than Formula One cars. They look all right. You have a lot of great drivers, but you wouldn't know that this series exists if you see it in the media, the way that they promote the series. Roger Penske is a multi-billionaire, and the guy can't spend a few $100 to go and have promotions. Like I've said it multiple times on the show that I'll gladly work for IndyCar and promote this series on the social media side or whatever, because this series needs not only an influx of people who have passion for the sport and could actually talk about it, but there also has to be people who connect to the past, which is something we lost with the passing of Robin Miller. He was one of those last bastions of the eras gone by of the Foyts and Mario Andretti's and the Al Unser Seniors and Johnny Rutherford and et cetera, et cetera. That's those days. We've lost that connection to IndyCar, and that's cool to talk about in terms of history, because that history is valid, and it is especially valid when you talk about the 500. They don't promote all these interesting factoids and tidbits, and they don't promote these drivers. Pato O'Ward is popular largely, one, probably social media, but two, because he of his Mexican heritage. That's the reason why he's popular. It isn't because people promote him. You look at Scott Dixon, the guy is one of the winningest drivers in the history of motorsports, one of the most prolific drivers in the last 25 years. And he's a stranger. He could probably walk into your local Target and people wouldn't even bat an eye, which is crazy to me. You got, the most popular drivers in the series, like one of them is Connor Daly, and he's not even employed, and James Hinchcliffe, who's an announcer. Like literally, those are the two most popular people that I can come up with when it comes to IndyCar. Joseph Newgarden has a presence, but I think the Bus Bros thing for him and Scott McLaughlin, it's a niche thing for the fans of IndyCar. But what kind of reach does Joseph Newgarden have outside of the IndyCar circuit? Even though he's somebody who looks the part, he's box office, he's well spoken. He's not getting promoted. He won the Indianapolis 500. He's the first American to win the Indianapolis 500 since like Ryan Hunter-Reay? Come on now. Like we're Rossi, my bad. Rossi is one of the funniest guys there is. He has a dry sense of humor, and he does a podcast with Hinch, but nobody talks about him. Like that, fundamentally, that's my biggest problem with IndyCar. The way they cover the race is something I'm fine. I can deal with the amount of commercials and some of the stuff that comes with these broadcasts, because at least they're shown on NBC and they're shown on television. Like they're actually shown you can either find them on NBC or you can find them on USA. Or worst case, you find them on Peacock. I mean, the way things are going with streaming, you're more likely to have streaming as a part of a lot of these series and sports in the near future anyway. So Peacock is relatively viable. And for the price point that you pay for it, I don't think it's that bad. But that's me. I mean, I know there's other people who disagree with that, but the promotional piece is what bothers me because of how many interesting characters there are in IndyCar. We spend so much time talking about NASCAR, and most of the guys on the NASCAR circuit are as entertaining as this, which is my holder for my headphones. And like the one thing they got lucky with is that Ryan Blaney is probably their most popular driver, and he is their champion. That's the one good thing they got going for them. Because otherwise, most of them other guys have the personality of a lamppost and don't really bring anything to the table. There's IndyCar guys that are really interesting, really funny, and compelling, but you wouldn't know that because they don't even get a 1 rating for some of these races, which is sick, to say the least. What say you, Josh, in regards to that? And also in terms of hybridization, I think it's good that they're incorporating it. It's kind of wonky in the way they are, though, but because the car is old and all these things, and why IndyCar, and they aren't trying to subsidize making a new car when Dalara's in Speedway and all this stuff is something that they have to answer. The teams are gonna have a mutiny, but in the end, all these guys are multi-millionaires. The notion that they can't afford a new car is BS to me too, but that's why IndyCar is IndyCar. What are your thoughts on what needs to change or what can get better, and then the hybrid component being brought into IndyCar racing here in 2024?
I mean, to kind of add on to your point of the promotion, I mean, remember they had the 100 Days to Indy show on the CW, which I will admit on here that I didn't even watch it. So I probably should have. I just, never made it a priority. And I mean, I think it's free to stream now somewhere, so I'll have to pick it up and watch it. But just, haven't never made it a priority to for whatever reason. And I saw some clips of it and everything, but I just never got around to watching it and stuff. And I generally don't really watch TV outside of live sports, to be honest anyways. I still on season 2 or whatever of Drive to Survive. So there's 4 or 5 seasons of that now, and it's my excuse is that it's hard for me to watch something that I already know has happened in there, and that really series like that is not for me, but for people who are trying to get interested in racing and need that background to kind of get the behind the scenes look so they can actually care about the drivers, whereas we understand it from the racing standpoint, so we know because of that we are able to invest in the drivers, and there's that part of it too. So but I mean, I can't even really tell you about the documentary itself, but I think the fact that they weren't able to really get anything from that, that was on the CW rather than on a streaming platform. I mean, it doesn't have to be Netflix, right? We have Drive to Survive on there, but it could be other platforms. Why can't they partner with Peacock to with NBC's right there? Why couldn't that be a Peacock series, or Disney Plus? Well, I mean, I guess that's a conflict there, but I just to give an example, there's other streaming platforms out there. I mean, I guess with NBC, it's right there with Peacock, and you have the cross promotion there, with Peacock, and be able to promote the 100 Days to Indy Obviously, this series has been struggling to have any popularity since 1996, and the only time that I think on a large mass scale that people ever cared about IndyCar since then was the couple of years that Danica Patrick was actually somewhat relevant. So obviously because she's a woman and everything, and was somewhat hot back then. So there's that, but they haven't really been able to break into the mass appeal. And it sucks because I think they have, if you compare all the big series in racing, I think they have some of the best racing that you can offer. It's more competitive than F1. There's more, entertaining personalities in the NASCAR. I'll agree with you there. Has a, for the NASCAR fans that are pissed off about, the whole, season coming down to one race. We have an American series that comes down to, it always naturally comes down to one race. Usually this year, obviously, Alex Blow was very dominant, but more often than not, it comes down to one race without the need for a contrived system, that doesn't, make a whole lot of sense like it is in NASCAR. You actually have competitive racing unlike in F1, so it's all about how they're able to market it, and they just haven't figured out a way to market it for whatever reason. I don't really know what the answer is, other than they have to figure out ways to make people care about American open wheel racing in a way that people haven't really cared about in a long time. They have to figure out a way to break into the market, like F1 has here with their with what they've been able to do here in America. I think part of it is you talk about the car. They're going to hybridization this year, so I think it's a good idea, and I'm curious to see how that plays out in ovals more than I am on road courses. But that's an aspect that could draw interest, but it's not very much. Let's be honest, here in America, we still care about our gas cars more than electric cars. Obviously, I don't really have a high opinion on electric cars myself, but we don't really care about that stuff as much as what maybe some it's still very niche is what I'm trying to say there, and everything. And then the car has the chassis is still the same since 2012. They made the aero kits update in 2018, which looks like more like a traditional Indy car, but it's all the same cars. They don't have any individual teams building any cars. You don't have any other potential manufacturers like they had in the late 90s that were producing cars for the IndyCar kart series back then. So there's no difference. So I think when you have a spec series, it's hard for people to have interest because it all looks the same other than the drivers and the individual teams and the paint scheme or the liveries and all that stuff. So there's that aspect of it as well. So and I think every time also when they have a chance to try to show that they're legitimate, they always figure out a way to fall on their faces. Like the final race of the season looked like the truck race at Phoenix there. So that made themselves look like a joke in that aspect. You can argue that the Indianapolis 500 for how great of a finish it was, it went against kind of their traditionalist philosophy of letting it play out naturally. You could tell that they were trying to give the fans a green finish and everything instead of kind of accepting that maybe sometimes it should come down to a caution ending the race. So you have that aspect as well. So there's a lot of things, of course. We'll get into it later, but the IndyCar video game never going off the ground is another huge aspect there. So in terms of popularity, I think they're about they're below NASCAR right now, outside of the Indy 500. They have a chance to break open because NASCAR has been struggling in the ratings for years, and this year, particularly from last year, they were struggling in the ratings, and I think attendance wasn't as great as well. So at some many tracks, so there's an opportunity there, but on terms of like overall popularity, more or less on the level of sports car racing. So we'll see if they're ever able to improve, but it starts with more creative thinking and being able to market themselves and I guess be able to make people care about it in the same way people care about Drive to Survive and even NASCAR to a certain extent. So they still have a lot of work to do. Now, as far as that goes, I mean, I think that's a giant chunk of that, but still, the mentioned the racing sometimes looking like a joke. I think that still needs to improve, and then I think the stewards need to be doing a better job of officiating at times. I think they did a pretty good job, but there's been more than a handful of times where the drivers were upset at the stewards for how they called a race during the year, and it's happened in the years past. So, I mean, as always, I think that can always improve as well. So, be interesting to see next year how this all turns out, and how hybridization turns out, how that's going to look like at the Indy 500, and just how is it going to look like more like Talladega, or is it going to be a lot more spread out than what we've seen in years past? We'll see.
Yeah, I'm curious about the hybrid thing. I mean, we do talk about Formula E on here, talk about Extreme E, but is it the most appealing electric racing? Not so much, but it's there, it's racing. Any like the IMSA series, any of these series that have like the regeneration, Formula One has had that for a while now, for a long while. I think it's something that is worthwhile. I think having a hybrid component is something that is going to be road going technology. It's going to be something that is relevant, and it's something that I think it has to be, is going to be a part of road going vehicles for near future. So we'll see how it works in IndyCar. New car wouldn't hurt, but that ain't coming. Engines, they should have went with a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine back in 2012 or 2011, and this whole issue of having manufacturers probably would have been solved a long time ago. And then promotions, that's the big one. And when I do agree with your point about the way that the stewarding of the races is at another turnover. The stewarding of races is really like inconsistent at times and selective, but then we're getting used to that in Formula One and NASCAR with all the selective enforcement and being consistently inconsistent. So it isn't shocking that major motorsport is having that kind of problem. We'll definitely come back to IndyCar, during the winter while we're in the off season. Wanted to give it its due here tonight. It's been a couple of months, of course, since they finished their seasons, but we're going to get into the Cup Series and all the in Xfinity, and probably do Xfinity in trucks and whatnot as we get on here, getting into the holiday season. While we watch a absolute shit show of turnovers between Denver and Buffalo, Buffalo doing everything in their power to lose the game, even though it's a tie game. We'll talk about Week 10 of the NFL season. A lot of last second victories with the last second field goals. A lot of big performances. Josh Allen looking bemused after James Cook fumbles, and that doesn't help me in fantasy either. But in terms of the this past week, where you got Denver and Buffalo right now looking like a cluster. You had this week. I'm trying to get all the results. That would be nice. I'm just trying to get the scores. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I mean in the tank in the toilet bowl, Chicago ended up winning over a horrendous Carolina Panthers team. In another toilet bowl, Indianapolis won in Germany over the New England Patriots, and I think the end is near for Bill Belichick in New England. Mac Jones is basically a sieve. Houston ends up going and winning in a last-second field goal over the Cincinnati Bengals on the road with C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud putting himself in. I mean, not only is he a likely favorite to win offensive rookie of the year, but arguably he's in the mix for the MVP conversation. Keeping and D'Amico Ryans in his first year as Houston Texans head coach is the leading candidate for coach of the year right now, halfway through the year. Minnesota with Josh Dobbs, the Josh Dobbs experience continues, and now he's with Minnesota, and they get a win over the New Orleans Saints. They knock out the Vikings, end up knocking out Derek Carr, Michael Thomas, and Marshawn Lattimore in that game. So we'll see how much they're affected. They're going on their bye, so that's something to see after their bye. Pittsburgh wins ugly. I don't know when you consider that their offense is really not that good outside of Najee Harris. They beat Green Bay there yesterday. It wasn't pretty, but they got it. Tampa Bay ends up beating up on the Tennessee Tuxedos. Will Levis in his second start got brought back to earth, and then Tampa Bay now will be going to Santa Clara to play the 49ers. Speaking of the 49ers, I know Josh will have his thoughts on Trevor and what Jacksonville did. The Niners come off of 3 consecutive losses and get the victory there, and a much needed victory in Duval County. But as I say, I mean, with Jacksonville, they're a game ahead of Houston, a game and a half ahead of Indianapolis. Division, everything, all roads lead to Jacksonville getting probably a number 3 seed as the year goes on, because Miami with the AFC East, there's 3 teams in that division that are somewhat competitive. The AFC North is going to destroy themselves. And then, Kansas City has a 2.5 game lead on Vegas, so they're going to win the division again. So it's really a game for the likes of Jacksonville, Baltimore, and whoever else to try and get ahead of Kansas City so that they can get that number 1 seed and make Kermit the Frog go on the road. Cleveland gets a big victory on the road against Baltimore late. They were able to score. They had a missed extra point, but then they come back out going later on with turnovers, get a field goal, get that victory, and now Cleveland is only a half game behind Baltimore in the division. So there's a lot to play for there. The Arizona Cardinals, you had Kyler Murray make his return after 11 months out because of the torn ACL. And he came back and he looked just like Kyler Murray with his speed and everything. So Arizona, which is tanking right now and probably looking for a quarterback or looking for something, they have some life while the Atlanta Falcons don't. The Detroit Lions continue their Jekyll and Hyde kind of deal. They've been shown they've been able to beat Kansas City. They've been able to beat some big teams, but then they've just as likely have been knocked around a bit. The LA Chargers have no defense, and which is crazy when you consider some of the players they employ on that defense. That Brandon Staley's days probably are numbered there as the head coach. The New York Giants basically sat there and were batting practice for the Dallas Cowgirls in the late window. Tommy DeVito having to play. They scored 17 points. That's about all you can say. A lot of infighting going on. Brian Daboll, in his second year as a head coach, having to keep things together when things seem to be going off the rails. The Shithawks beat the Washington General Redskin Commanders. Last second field goal there. Commanders have been competitive even though they have one of the worst offensive lines in the history of mankind. They allow Sam Howell to get destroyed every game, every week, but he's tough and he continues to stand up to it. Even with the fact that Riverboat Ron is going to get fired here in the next few weeks, probably. And then the Raider game, which was more a case of Zach Wilson being absolutely inept at playing quarterback, and not the fact that the Raiders with Antonio Pierce as their head coach, have an identity now on both offense and defense. Robert Spillane making the big interception to basically end the game there on Sunday Night Football. Aiden O'Connell in his run right now as the Raiders quarterback. Wow, that was basically he was rifling that to make it a jump ball. And then now we're in a tie ball game in the fourth quarter and Monday Night Football here. With Denver and with Buffalo. But I mean, for me, the Niners ended up after 3 weeks of losing and going on a bye, playing against a tough opponent in Jacksonville on the road at a 1:00 game, so playing a 10:00 game. The debut of Chase Young was huge. Even though Eric Armstead he was not happy with Brandon Scherf for whatever. He felt like he got cut on a play where he ended up injuring his knee. But that aside, the defensive line was just, it looked like basically an NHRA race. Everybody was going off. It's like you're racing to the quarterback, he's racing to the quarterback, etc., etc. Nick Bosa was in the kitchen of Trevor Lawrence all day. Chase Young was in the kitchen. All these guys were, and that was the key, really, on the defensive side of the ball, along with actually playing fundamental defense with tackling, which has become a problem in recent weeks. The ability to tackle, identifying who they have to take away, which of course was Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. Both of those guys have been, especially Travis Etienne has been playing at a very high level but the Niners were able to limit him. And once you're able to take away a guy of his caliber, when Trevor's having to go and basically sit in the pocket and pray, and for as good as Trevor Lawrence is, that's asking for trouble. And then on the offensive side, I mean, CMC doesn't get a touchdown, but everybody else seemingly did. GK with a big 66-yard touchdown. What do you call it? Juice got one. Brandon Ayuk got one early in the game to set the tone. Him and Brock Purdy have a great chemistry together, but I think the chemistry in general with the whole offense, Brock Purdy went back to what he has been, playing within himself, not making bad decisions, forcing the ball, and that's where the Niners are able to win games. And I mean, CMC doesn't get the touchdown, but it doesn't matter. He's still really, really damn good, and so is Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel being back, also having Trent Williams back was huge. And the Niners were able to go out there and beat a very tough opponent on Sunday and put themselves in position going back home to play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to try to put another winning streak together before having to play Seattle twice in 3 weeks. They're going to be playing Seattle on a short week on next Thursday, and for Thanksgiving as a nightcap on NBC, and then they're going to be playing them again after playing the Philadelphia Eagles. So that'll be something to look at. Fantasy-wise, my team in my league continues to struggle. The quarterback play and IDP play has been a problem. I lead one league, one of my teams is the leader in that division or that league, so that's something I'm looking forward to. Hopefully continuing that league that I've won twice before. In the other regular league, the redraft league, I'm having a really good week this week and moving myself up in playoff contention in all 3 leagues. In terms of the dynasty, I didn't look at it. I mean, I have when I was talking about Trev and I don't know what's going on with that. I'll check it here to see if we did win. Okay, well, that's good. All of a sudden now we're on a winning streak, so we're actually moving up. I don't know if we actually have a chance. I mean, yeah, that is an ugly number there. Picking up Trenton Irwin for Cincinnati was a big call. Brian Robinson ended up doing some work. Garrett Wilson, Minshew wasn't good. Zach Moss now is basically not a factor anymore. But yeah, we're winning there. So, Josh, I'll give you the floor on your thoughts and takeaways from Jacksonville coming off the bye at home and what transpired for your Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah. They did not play well. So, you say that they could get third place or get third place in the NFL, or third seed, sorry. But, I mean, they have a tougher schedule. They just lost to the 49ers. And they have Tennessee next week, which, they're not as good. But then Houston's on the rise. The Bengals on Monday night, and then they play the Browns, and then the Ravens. So those are 3 really good AFC North teams in a row. And then the Panthers and the Bucks, which I don't know. Panthers probably an easy win. but the Bucks are kind of scrappy, and then they end the year in Tennessee, so that'll be interesting there. But I mean, so far this year, their record is the exact opposite of last year on a game-by-game basis. Last year, they dropped the first game 1-2 in a row, and then went 0 for October, losing 5 in a row before winning their third game at home against Oakland. And this year, they've gone, the first game they won, dropped 2, won 5 in a row. Now they've won or lost this past game, and then after that, then they went 2-7 or 7-2 to end the year. And if that holds, then they're going to go 2-7 and go 8-9 and miss the probably miss the playoffs. So if that happens, so hopefully it doesn't happen, but that's where it's trending right now. And based on how they played yesterday, that could be likely. Their interior offensive line just isn't good against San Francisco. They aren't able to, Trevor's not really able to get into a rhythm because he can't trust the protection from the middle. The left guard and center aren't really great. The wide receivers, they have slot wide receivers playing horizontal when they need to be vertical, and they can't be vertical because the offensive line sucks. And they don't really have a wide receiver above 6 foot that's currently active on the roster. And the one guy that, they do, but he hasn't really seen any targets yet or anything. And the one guy that they've been able to trust that's over 6 foot just got arrested about 2 hours ago. So Zay Jones being arrested on a misdemeanor for domestic battery or something like that. So we'll see how that goes. But and I think he has court in the morning, so we'll see how what the exact details and everything, and all that stuff. So obviously it's a misdemeanor, but it's obviously it's not good to get arrested, of course. But you have that. So I'm not really worried about Trevor Lawrence, but I don't think he's being set up to succeed because they didn't put together a good offensive line this year. They didn't do anything in free agency to improve really, and they kept their own guys. They traded for Calvin Ridley, which looked good back then, but now it looks like that wasn't a good trade because he hasn't produced, largely because he's probably not being. He's not being schemed for correctly. They're not putting him in the right scenarios. They haven't figured out how to use them. So this probably all ends in a year's time with Doug Peterson or getting fired or something. So because Trevor Lawrence needs to be a down the field type, aggressive type player, and he probably fits in more of a Bruce Arians type offense in his player of his talent. Not this like horizontal 15 play per drive West Coast offense where you just kind of get not chunk plays, but move the chains every 3 plays type of drives. So because that's just really, really painful to play football, and you don't have really a good margin of error to be able to do that. And Travis Etienne has played good, but he's also struggled because they can't block up the middle, and they face a monster team like the 49ers, and he wasn't able to do anything outside of a 16-yard run to the outside. So you have that. So we'll see how they go next week. It should be a rebound game, hopefully against the Titans, but it's still got a tough divisional opponent in the Texans that they play on the road post Thanksgiving. So we'll see how it goes there, but it's not as comfortable as what it looked like 2 weeks ago. And people were talking about wanting or comparing him to CJ Stroud, and CJ Stroud has nothing to do with this. Like, why does CJ Stroud being good make Trevor Lawrence a bad quarterback or anything? It's just horse shit or whatever to make those kind of comparisons. And those people are just people that want to see fantasy numbers or video game numbers every week. And he's proven that he can play good. It's just that they're not putting him in a good place. And that brings question of the offensive philosophy and who's in charge of this. So Balky didn't do them right by not setting them up right with the right players, and then Peterson, who deflected play calling to Press Taylor for whatever reason. Whoever it is, Press Taylor or Doug Peterson, they're not scheming them up right to be able to give their players a chance at success. So we'll see how it goes next week. But their ability to win over good teams, they didn't beat the Chiefs, they didn't beat the 49ers. So we'll see if they make the playoffs, how far they actually go. So kind of ready just to sim to the off season, or at least sim to the end of the season, see where they end up, if that's the playoffs or not. So because it's clear that the offense is just going to struggle, and it's just going to look like a car accident half of the time. So it's not looking good. And Trevor Lawrence has 9 touchdowns and more turnovers than touchdowns. So which I think some of it is his fault, but I think they're just not in a position to be able to succeed with the right the right personnel and the right scheme and play calling philosophy. So they'll probably get carried by the defense going into the end of the year. So we'll see how that goes. Which they defensively I think they played well in the first half defensively, but you need an offense to be able to put pressure on well, and they weren't able to do that. So Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen played well in the first half. Boye Oluokun played well. So they were able to get pressure on Brock Purdy outside of that one touchdown drive that they had in the first half or the first quarter. So but then of course the game got blown wide open with isolating George Kittle in coverage, and only having him covered by a single linebacker, and that was pretty much the backbreaker in that game. So this is a game for the Jaguars that kind of makes you, if you're a Jaguars fan, questions your existence. And I just lost on fantasy there. So that's interesting to see that play out like that. Definitely not the game that they wanted, and kind of expected it to be a lot closer than 34-3. So we'll see how it goes next week against the Titans, and hopefully there aren't any away fans this time, because that was just sad for whatever reason. A lot of fans wearing red in the stands again. So just like there was against the Chiefs, because they had to resell their tickets, or other companies buying up seats or whatever it is. I know Florida's turning into the new California, so maybe people are really hurting for money here. With people buying, or prices inflating, and cost of living going up in the last couple of years. So maybe that's a factor there, but still not a good sight to see with the stadium being dominant in the other team's colors. So hopefully we won't have to deal with that the rest of the season. But this wasn't a good look for sure.
Yeah, it's something that, for the Niners, after the way they played the 3 weeks, especially when they basically got demolished by Cincinnati. They weren't really in the game against Cleveland. And I'm trying to remember offhand who else they went and lost to. Fucking I have to go and bring that up. So bring the playoffs. Yeah, so then the Niners, when they coming off of it, they ended up losing to Minnesota. That was with what's his name going down too. Either way, it's something you have. It's a 1 week league. You can have 1 week or 3 weeks where you're not looking great, and then the next week you're back in business. And that's where it's something to look at. There's things to solidify, and had concerns others would acquire Surtain. That would have been been good if the Niners could have gotten Patrick Surtain, but looks like Denver's going to be in the mix. Otherwise, yeah. So that's something. I mean, there's a lot to look at as we get through the second half of this season. When you're talking about who's in play, the AFC is going to be very difficult to make it wherever you are, whether you're trying to win or trying to get in with a division or trying to go and put yourself in a position as a wild card. And the contrast to that, of course, is the NFC with how bad the NFC is in general. But you know, that's kind of the way things go. It used to be a long time ago the NFC was way above the AFC, and now these days it's the other way around with all the great quarterback play there is in the AFC. So we'll see what happens next week, and we'll talk about it on the GSP. All right, so let's move on. MotoGP and Moto2 at Malaysia this past weekend. They in terms of the MotoGP, Enea Bastianini gets his first win as a factory Ducati rider. Something that a lot of people thought was going to happen a lot more this year, but hasn't because of the issues were injuries suffered early in the season. Bastianini who gets the win over Cook gets another big run over Alex Marquez, who won the sprint on Saturday, and Pecco and Bastianini's teammate Pecco Bagnaia rounds out the podium, double podium for the Ducati factory. Jorge Martin finishes behind Bagnaia in both the sprint and the race. Yamahas get a 5-7 from Quartararo and Morbidelli, sandwiched in between is Marco Bezzecchi with the VR46. And Luca Marini, his teammate and the brother of Valentino Rossi, is rumored to be going to Honda to take over the ride being vacated by Marc Marquez. Amongst that's at least one person that is in play. Fabio Di Gianantonio is another one that's in talks, but doesn't sound like that's going to be the case. There were Miguel Oliveira, I think, was the initial choice, but they didn't want to give him a multi-year deal, so he didn't want to take that, considering some of the options he may have, and being a multi-time Grand Prix winner. The Aprilia package right now is much more competitive than Honda. The standings right now, Pecco Bagnaia has a 14-point lead on Jorge Martin with 2 races to go, or 4 total races to go, because they have 2 sprints and 2 races, 2 actual races. Marco Bezzecchi solidly in third. Brad Binder basically solid in fourth. Johan Zarco and Alicia Spargo separated by 2 points for fifth. Then Maverick Vinales and Luca Marini, 4 points separating those 2 guys. Fabio Quartararo, Joan Mir, Alex Marquez for the last couple of spots in the top 10 separated. There's 7 points for those guys. Then in Moto2, go over here. I'm trying to just bring that up. Moto2. Pedro Costa, finally, after what has been essentially we thought was going to happen at at the onset of the season, but Pedro Acosta ends up winning the Moto2 title and has won in Moto3, he's won in Moto2, and he's going to be moving on to Tech 3 to race for Gas and KTM. So that is something to see what he's going to be able to do next season as a rookie in MotoGP. We'll see what happens there. In the race itself, though, Philippe Aldeguer, who's another person who's being talked about to possibly move up into MotoGP next year, possibly to take over the ride Luca Marini might be exiting. Gets the win over Acosta. Ramirez third for the OnlyFans American Racing Team. So big result for them. Joe Roberts finishes 8th. Then I'm trying to see who else. Yeah, Sean Dillon Kelly back racing for the Forward team. Finished 19th. I'm trying to look for the other. Yeah, and Rory Skinner finished 20th in the Grand Prix. So you want to go and look at the standings. So yeah, Pedro Acosta is your Moto2 World Champion. Tony Arbolino solidly in second. Jake Dixon has a 21-point lead over Aldeguer. And then you add another 24-point lead on Aaron Canet. Somikat Chantra is in 6th. Joe Roberts is 3.5 points behind Sergio Garcia for 13th. And probably not going to get up there to the top 10. Would need a lot of help to get to 10th. Or even 11th. I think best case scenario in the next 2 rounds is to possibly get up to Sam Lowe's there. Ramirez getting his best finish of the year and tripling the amount of points he's had with his podium finish, moves up to 17th in points. Skinner 28th in points with 2 points so far this year, and Sean Dillon Kelly, the last person who has scored a point so far this year. Bunch of guys who have either had wild cards or not raced all year don't have any points. I don't think there's only maybe 2 guys that have raced all year that haven't scored a point, so something to look at. They'll be racing at Qatar here this coming weekend getting ready for the end of their season, seeing what they can do. In NHRA, the season finale, the NHRA finals at Pomona, sees Doug Coletta get the race victory, and win his first Top Fuel title after he's been at this game going back to the 90s, after he stopped racing in USAC. Goes and gets that victory, goes and wins, beats Leah Pruitt in the finals to go and get that championship. What's it called? Trying to look. Doug Coletta came out from the number 5 spot, beat Dan Mercier, Josh Hart, and Justin Ashley on his way to the final. Leah Pruitt from the number 6 spot beat Tony Schumacher, Antron Brown, and Steve Torrance to get to the final. Austin Prock was the number 1 qualifier, but got knocked out in the second round. In Funny Car, Chad Green gets his first career victory against Tim Wilkerson. Green was the number 8 qualifier, beat J.R. Todd. Robert Height, who was the number 1 qualifier and competing for the championship. Blake Alexander beats Blake Alexander. Matt Hagan ends up losing to Blake Alexander, but he had done enough to become now a 4-time Funny Car champion, winning the first championship for Tony Stewart Racing in NHRA. Wilkerson came from the number 10 spot, beat Ron Capps, the defending series champion, John Force in the second round, and Cruz Pentragon in the semifinal. What kind of defense is this? Jesus. And then in Pro Stock here waiting. Yeah, Aaron Stanfield gets the victory. Eric Enders gets another championship. Lost in the semifinals to Matt Hartford, but she had locked up the championship. Aaron Stanfield from the number 5 spot beat Derek Kramer, Troy Coughlin Jr., Anderson Redlit, and then beats Matt Hartford in the final. Hartford from number 7 spot beat Dallas Glenn, Kyle Koretsky, and Enders on his way to the final. Pro Stock Motorcycle was Gage Herrera. This whole entire year was Gage Herrera. Qualified number 1. Basically didn't have to race against Blaine Hale. Then he beat Ellie Tonglet in the second round, Steve Johnson, and then beats his teammate Eddie Krawick yet again. Eddie Krawick from the number 3 spot beat Chris Bostic, Mark Ingerson, and Hector Arana Jr. To get to the final there. So those are the 4 pro categories. Doug Coletta wins the championship by 48 points over Steve Torrance, 57 over Leah Pruitt. In Funny Car, Matt Hagan wins the championship by 12 points over Robert Height and 17 over Bob Tasca. Pro Stock Enders won it during qualifying, and so did Gage Herrera. Both those drivers won their championships during the qualifying session. Rally Japan, of course, Cali Rovanpera won the championship already. Manufacturers Championship, I think, is still might be in play, or I mean, maybe or I might be wrong on that, but last race of the season, Rally Japan, the championship standings in terms of drivers. Efren Evans has a 7-point lead over Thierry Neuville. So Toyota trying to get a 1-2 in the standings. So we'll see if that happens. Otanek in 4th. Sebastian Ogier, who hasn't run every race, but is 5th. Lappy for Hyundai right now in 6th. Katsuda 7th, racing his home rally, see what he can do there. Actually, Oliver Solberg, who's racing in a WRC2, is actually in 10th in the World Championship, which is something. And then Manufacturers Championship is Toyota. Yeah, they won it. Yeah, so Toyota's won the Manufacturers Championship. They're 105 points ahead of Hyundai. So yeah, so that's what's going on there. So we'll see what happens in Rally Japan to end the 2023 World Rally Championship season. And then, I mean, in terms of news going on, Ben Bayshore's moving to Legacy Motor Club to work with John Hunter in Cup next year. Mark Marquez, who's moving over to Ducati, is going to bring Red Bull with him. You got a bunch of IMSA announcements with driver lineups in all classes. Alexander Rossi will race in the Rolex 24 for FAF, and the McLaren. Oliver Jarvis will be a full-time regular in that FAF McLaren. The Iron Lynx Lamborghini, they'll race 3 Lamborghini Huracans at the Rolex 24. One for the Iron Dames, coming off of their victory at Bahrain to end the GTM category. Raffaele Marciello is moving, more than likely moving to BMW to race in the World Endurance Championship in prototype category. Daniel Juncadella, a longtime Mercedes driver, is going to be racing for Corvette. So that's a big pickup there. Go through some of these other people. I got that. Trying to get through that. Yeah, so Kirk, Jarvis, then AO Racing, who's been racing those wildly painted Porsches. They're gonna race one Porsche with Sebastian Prix in GT Pro. Hyatt and Paul Loupchatin, who competed for the championship in LMP2 this year with the heck am I forgetting his name now? Ben Keating. They're going to be in LMP2 racing next year, so that category is going to be quite deep and interesting next year. Mario Farnbacher and Zachary Robichon will be moving over to Harder Racing and Aston Martin. So that's just a few. Yeah, Earl Bamber is going to race the Enduros for Corvette, and then he'll of course be racing for Ganassi in the World Endurance Championship in the Cadillac LMDH on the World Endurance side. So that'll be his other job there. Sebastian Bourdais and Renger van de Zande will continue in the 01 Ganassi LMDH in IMSA. So that's those are some of the news items there in the world of sports cars. And the one last thing I'll bring up is with recent news here the last couple of days that the great Ken Squire, his health is deteriorating and he might be at the end. It's one thing for me as someone who has written had time writing, someone who has been able to cover the sport with this podcast and talk about motorsports and have platforms to go to talk about this passion of mine. It wouldn't be there without the likes and the people like Ken Squire. His voice is something that basically was a part of my childhood. The Squireisms and everything. I caught him on the later end of his career, but for him, I think one of the great things was those years with Darlington where they would invite him back and they'd have Ned Jarrett as well, and they'd come back during the second stage of the Southern 500 and they'd call the race. And that's where Eric Jones got his nickname. I always go and say that Jones boy from Byron, Michigan, that Truax kid from Mayetta, New Jersey, all those great lines, all the great sayings and Squireisms and all. And, hopefully, praying for him to, keep going and being able to be all right. But if it is his time, I mean, He's one of the great people that has ever been in the world of motorsports and NASCAR. The way we look and view motorsports in general wouldn't be around if it weren't for Ken Squire. So, hopefully thoughts and our prayers for Ken Squire right now at this time. Josh, let us know what's going on in the world of sim racing and gaming on the sim segment.
We're going to go over F1 first before.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I forgot. That's what I get for, I was going to, the 1 a.m. Grand Prix, as you aptly called it. I don't know who picked the last week. I mean, I think I was first, so you get first dibs on who finishes behind Fish Lips, I guess.
And the game here, and looks like the Broncos are going to miss on the last second field goal. Wow, and a flag. So
No, there's 12 men on the field for the Buffalo Bills.
Wow. Wow, crazy. Okay.
Oh, so yeah, and isn't didn't McDermott coach special teams at some point too?
He was a special teams coach for Carolina, I think.
Yeah. So that's just inexplicable to have that kind of penalty there. Denver gets a second chance, and
well, he missed a kick in the first half, so let's see here. Don't say anything yet, because I know I'm behind. Oh, you got it.
Yeah. So
wow.
Denver now moves to 4-5, and Buffalo's downslide continues. They are now 5-5. Will Lutz, who used to kick for the New Orleans Saints, pipes it right through the middle there. Nice and pure. And Denver will now go back home. Or no, they're going to Minnesota, I think, for Sunday Night Football. So, in Josh Dobbs' experience, so we'll see how that all goes next week.
So, anyways, though, I guess on the F1 picks, I mean, obviously, Verstappen first. I'm going to go with... I should probably just pull up the results from last week and play off of that. Not exactly, but, I need to remember. I'll go I'll go Lando Norris second, and then Sergio Perez in third. So...
and then round out podium. Yeah, for me, Fish Lips will win, and then I'll go with instead. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Lewis Hamilton in second. And then third place, I will say, is Charles Leclerc. Round out podium. The curiosity is what the racing will be like. There isn't any other racing going on outside of the Grand Prix. The temperatures and DAG and all that stuff is curious to see what will go on. Track evolution is going to be huge throughout the weekend with the lack of running that's going on. So something that we'll have to look at. In terms of what to expect, I mean, what does this mean? this Grand Prix is trying to essentially, like you brought it up, Josh, offline, like essentially this Grand Prix is like Monaco, like they want to have an American version of Monaco. So it isn't anywhere near as, exclusive, or, you don't have all the fancy boats and all the classic turns that have been around for 83 years or whatever the hell. But, you have the Las Vegas Strip, you have the lights, you have all the casinos, you have big name acts and big name people are going to show up there. So is it really more of a marketing exercise? Yeah, probably. When you consider that there's one dominant figure that wins every race, it becomes more of a procession. And knowing that a lot of people are just going to be shit-faced and drunk and throwing up all over themselves at that point of the evening, I guess that's what they want. But Formula One and Liberty has put in a lot of money building a permanent pit and build the buildings and pit road and garages and the whole thing. So I guess they really are invested in making sure this race comes off. So I guess we'll see how it does come off this weekend and talk about it next week on the GSP. Now we'll go to you, Josh, and talk about the sim racing, iRacing, and IndyCar you brought up earlier too, with what's going on with them and their the trials and tribulations they're going through with making a game.
I mean, IndyCar, I think it's a big story with motorsports games finally suspending development because they're pretty much all about to go under, I think. And yeah, it's really bad for them, obviously. And of course, even bad for IndyCar that they're not going to have their game produced. And, IndyCar, obviously, they're now looking at alternatives to getting their game. Well, come on, let's just make up with iRacing and get it over with and, sponsor the series again and get the, one of the biggest sim races in the world. I got to defend my title, man. So, I got to be able to come back and win it and everything. So get the iRacing Indy 500 back on the table and all that stuff and figure something out. Because this is not not what we want to see. Regardless of all this, like, don't want to see a title have to get canceled because, or suspended at least, because incompetency or financial whatever the issue is with the producing company. So it's unfortunate that it's come down to this, but again, like we said earlier, with Penske being able to promote the series, and I feel like some good foresight, we could have seen this from the get-go. Or at least they could have made better decisions on that. They didn't have to partner with this company, which they made NASCAR Ignition and 2021 Ignition, and that was really bad. And I don't really know why they had to partner with this company to come out with the game that ultimately is probably never going to come out. So it's unfortunate, but we'll have to. Hopefully they are able to correct the result. So as for my sim racing, mainly focused on NASCAR 87s at Fontana. It was good runs there. Finished top 5 in my or top 10, top 5 in my runs there this weekend or this past week. Tires are important. In the last race I ran, I think I used up I pitted on the first caution for tires, and the first caution came out with lap 10 of or lap 15 of 65, and probably should have waited another for the next caution to change my tires, because by the last caution that came out with 10 to go, which came out because somebody stopped on the track, and we were having a good battle for up front in the top 5, but in top 7, but I I did not have any tires, and so the leader came down pit road and got his tires, and then 2 laps he was able to get back to the front, and then it came down to 2 to go, and he was making a pass for the lead, and then got bumped and spun out. So and then the caution came out and ended the race. So that was need to be able to plan better so that you have tires available on the last possible caution. Always save your set for the possible, because you get 2 sets in the 87 series. So at least save 1 set of tires for possible finish like that, especially at a track like Fontana, where it's very worn out compared to other tracks, and tires really matter on a short run where you can make up that much time. So look out for that next time. So got that, and then ran some road course racing, Formula Fords at Okayama. Got a podium, finished second in that one in the Open Series. So I didn't change the setup or anything, but ran in the Open Series and ran pretty competitively and figured out something there. And then had a good run there. And then also ran the Toyota GR86s at Watkins Glen on the Cup layout, road course layout, and ran okay there. My first attempt and the second attempt just never got off the ground, because on the start some jabroni went and tried to jump the start and then crashed. And it started according, in fact, that basically took a bunch of people out in the top 10, and that included me. So never really got off the ground there. And honestly, I was able to, I didn't quit the race, but try to get back out on track. And the guy that started it all got ahead of me, and then tried to really hunt him down. I wasn't gonna wreck him, but I was gonna probably give him a friendly door rub there, but wasn't able to get up to his door to be able to do that. So because I didn't appreciate it. And then afterwards, I should have protested it, but that was definitely, when jumping the start, I think, is something that you can or should be able to protest in that game. So probably should have, but I forgot to, so whatever. But I didn't like that, but still thought I did well in road course racing this past week on iRacing. And then as a side note, I went go-karting again at Bushnell for the first time since July. Went there, and they had their softer compound tires that they were running on their rental go-karts, because last weekend they had a solo event, 60 lap endurance and 70 lap endurance event last weekend, which I want to do, but it was my birthday and want to spend time with family also. But I guess I could have done that. But anyways, though, they left the tires on for the past week so that people could go out and try them after the endurance events. So came out and tried that. Spent 5 races there and did that. Ran my best lap before that was like a 70.73 something, I think, or 72.73 something, and then this past week I was able to get it down to 70.37, I think. So 2.5 second improvement there. So very quick on the tires. It was good laps, but someone else put up a 68.7, so I still apparently have 2.5 seconds to gain somehow. So or a second and a half. So that was still a lot. But I asked the guy later, it's like, what did you do here on that lap? And he's like, I don't know, I have no idea what I'm doing. So it's sometimes it works out like that, and being able to run fast. But as soon as you got in the cart with the softer tires, you knew they were good as soon as you drove out of the pits. So it gave you the confidence to really drive with good pace, and to be able to attack the corners and get out on the exits with tons and tons of grip. So that was fun. One of my friends came with me. He definitely improved from last time we went out go-karting. He was good there, and then had a good lap in one of our sessions. So he did well there. So I was proud of it. We're a couple friends here that we've been kind of go-karting with off and on. One of them moved, and then the other 2 guys still trying to get them up to speed, and we've been helping them out throughout the year. So being able to get them good. So we're making progress there. So glad to be able to kind of spread the racing culture, spread the go-karting culture, and be able to get good at that. So that was fun. So it's good Saturday or good Friday to be able to spend on the day off. So from work, so being able to do that and spend some time out of the track, in addition to iRacing. So that was good. And actually, since I was often the times the fastest guy, except for that one dude, passing other cars, lapping them, it's definitely aggressive. And I think there's maybe a couple of times where I surprised past somebody because I was just not gonna let people hang around in front of me for too long, and I think some people had to take evasive action and go into the dirt. So that was kind of part of it, but I was trying to not waste any time, trying to put down laps on these good tires, not waste that opportunity. So had to be able to pass them very aggressively, and obviously having the confidence to do that with softer compound tires, lets you do that and come out on the other side without losing too much time. So had to do it, but it was fun being able to race out there on Friday. So hopefully I'll do it again later. Got to try to get back into one of the pro karts, I guess, but until then, try to still improve and hone the craft on the rental karts. So as always, that was fun. So good weekend of real racing, I guess, and good weekend of sim racing decently. So of course, the streams, of course, when I stream, Twitch TV/usailor2, Twitter takes and everything at JP Huffline on Twitter, and then of course our podcasts, which we upload the show, YouTube at Gripshooter Podcast. So go on there and watch our streams and watch our content on there, and follow me for insight on the Jacksonville Jaguars and other racing takes and all that stuff. So follow me on there and see what I'm thinking, and good chance I'll probably just repeat what I see or tweet on there onto the show and give more expanded thought on that. So follow me on there. So yeah, as always, glad to be able to do it for another week and be able to talk about it on here with you.
Oh, absolutely, man. As always, say wouldn't want to do it with anyone else. We have fun here, even when we see horrendous football like what the Buffalo Bills played today. The Jekyll and Hyde that is the Buffalo Bills. I think they're turning into the San Diego LA Chargers with how bad they're performing. But in terms of, we got this deal. We talk about it. Been doing this for 4 years, almost getting to the end of season 4. Just crazy to think, and close to 200 episodes, which is also crazy to think. Here, you can find us you can find us anywhere you find podcasts. Basically, you can find the show on my blog site, philipgmatthew.com. You can find me at pgmatthew28 on X, Twitter, whatever. You can find me at philipgmatthew28 on Insta. Find us, of course, on YouTube, as Josh mentioned. And so to find us with the video stream, and also getting this show out with the sound on Podbean, amongst other places. You find us over there. So that is how to follow us, and at GripsterPod on Twitter as well. So with that, we will be back for next week on episode 195 with the Gripster podcast, and talk about Formula One, the Las Vegas Grand Prix. We will get into NFL Week 11 and whatever else is coming up in regards to the world of motorsports. We'll talk about here on the Gripster podcast. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Take care, and we'll see you next time.